Hello, I'm Professor Jacques Duplessis. Let's take a look at the Information Society, also known as the Data Society. So, Information Society, once again, who is it? Who are we talking about? Obviously, all of those with our fingers in the information pie. That's what we're talking about. That's my informal presentation to you on who that is. But let's take a little closer look. So, it means those who use information. That says it all, doesn't it? But in more detail, those who distribute information, those who integrate information, manipulate information, especially those who create information. That's really a key player. So let's take a look at the Information Society as a concept and look at the year 1124. So very few books. Average people never saw books. It was more of an oral culture. It's a very specialized thing that far put away those who could write and read. And books were few and far between. It's very difficult to find them simply because to make paper was so expensive and so few people could write and so forth. So it really made it very inaccessible. Move forward to 1824. What do we see? Many more books. People are becoming well read, more authors. So in other words, you look at more production, more distribution of information, more use of information, but still a small slice of the pie if we compare it to 2024. And suddenly we see information is everywhere. It's flooded. And the concept of data, information, and knowledge has grown exponentially. So it's a phenomenal era to be in as we look at this. So let's take a look at a graphic. This comes from International Communications Union as reflected in Wikipedia. But there, if you look closely to this, you see back in 1996, and that's not that long ago, 10% of the developed world were really in the digital space. And globally, a fraction. And look where it's gone today. In the developed world, over 80%. We can clearly see the trend that digital is taking the world. Now, here's another example that I find really useful too, coming from the same source, meaning Wikipedia, but a different source initially. And that's really interesting to look back once again in 1986. That green there is analog data. In other words, mainly paper, I guess. And how that has grown to 1993, but still mainly analog. And then the definite rise of the digital era started to the year 2000, where analog storage was still a big deal, but now digital storage became a big thing. And then the exponential growth of digital storage. So if you just looked at the analog path, it had its heyday maybe the year 2000, and then it started to shrink. It held its own to some degree, but it really started to shrink. And an absolute blossoming of digital storage. And there they give you different instances of digital storage. And at the end here, they say 280 exabytes. Go look up the megabytes, gigabytes, and all the way up to exabytes. Phenomenal experience to see where we're going, and it's not stopping. So, little look at data storage. That's a fascinating thing. In my lifetime, it's been interesting to see because I remember the day of cardstock, punch cards, and how that worked. Amazing experience. Patience and space taken up by these punch cards. So we started with punch cards, then we had reel-to-reel tapes. I remember walking into data centers with just shelves and shelves of reel-to-reel tapes. Then we got these huge floppy disks. They got smaller and smaller. Eventually the 3.5-inch disks. Then hard disks started. I remember when we got like 10 megabyte hard drive. Phew, and it was expensive, and huge. Now, fascinating, looking back at those days. And then optical disk drives came out. That was really cool, but also about a megabyte was on it, so nothing big, and sometimes a little bigger. But then I remember I was teaching at UWM when the first thumb drives came out, USB drive, and I held up the 16 megabyte thumb drive, and I said, guys, here's my prediction. This is the floppy killer, and it was. Floppies went away, thumb drives became it. But now, how come thumb drives is something of the past? Because of connectivity, and we'll speak about that in a second. So with thumb drives, then hard drives got replaced by solid state drives. And now Microsoft is about to release the glass drives with phenomenal storage on them and very interesting capabilities. So the growth is exponential, technology is growing, and this is not stopping. So now, as I said, let's take a look at connectivity. First, we had standalone machines. Then you got a local network. I remember Novell was, pioneering company in establishing networks, local area networks, and so forth. A phenomenal experience. Libraries loved it. Now the catalog could go away, and they could really put it on computers, and you could have computer stations throughout the library where you could look up things. Whoa, this was fancy. And of course, that kept expanding to the internet. And today the internet is ubiquitous, and not only so, it is seen as a right for people to have access. And that is becoming more and more of a default as we see that growth internationally. So then it used to be you had to plug in with a cable, then it became Wi-Fi, and now of course Bluetooth is growing, and so all these interesting ways in which devices connect to each other. And then another fascinating thing is where you have sensors and an exponential growth of sensors as well, different types of sensors, humidity, temperature, noise, vibration. It's amazing, just gone on and on. And they have their own IP address. In other words, that internet protocol address means that you can communicate with them. You can give that sensor instructions, you can download data, and so forth. So phenomenal what we do. And this has all led to the establishment of IoT, Internet of Things. And that, of course, is a phenomenal infrastructure for artificial intelligence. So that today you can sensor the traffic patterns throughout a city. And with artificial intelligence, manage your traffic lights and do a lot to make the flow work better. Phenomenal, intelligent where it can go, but we'll still speak about that later. This is just a basic brush with these wonderful things as we look towards the future. And so the last slide I want to show you, and there's so much more to talk about, and some of the material we'll be accessing will really get into it. And that is the virtual reality space. How we've got this digital twin of so many things. How, you've got Google Maps or Google Earth, and then you've got the real Earth, and how those two correlate and work together. So in manufacturing, how something is created virtually and refined and fine-tuned and tested and everything before it's ever produced physically. I remember being in a car racing track, and what really surprised me, two things. How incredibly noisy the place is. Man, those cars are loud. And then the second thing is the data that they gather. Just oodles and oodles of data, and it all means something really rich and significant to them. To understand exactly, as you reach the corner, that's the tires rotation in the back and the front, and the temperature of the tires, and the, how much air they've got in them, and the throttle on the engine, and how much throughput is there of gasoline, and on and on and on. And then there's a lot of work based on that data of how can we make it even better, and understanding that. So amazing where this goes. Self-driving cars, all these things, just amazing to see how the virtual world is creating its own space and connecting with the world. But there'll be lots of talk about that. So the virtual world has also moved into so many places we never thought we'd see it. So I remember as a child trying to think, okay, what could be virtual? And you're very limited in your thinking when I was a child, but today it's amazing and wonderful to see where it's going. So healthcare, amazing what's doing in healthcare. How you could have in a small town in a less populated state, have a car accident, go to the a local little hospital. They take your x-rays, immediately it's loaded and on the internet somewhere in a foreign country. Often the results are read and you get the results back right away, and a very, very solid diagnosis of what your situation is. So wonderful how it saves lives even. So government, movies, entertainment, warfare, cybersecurity, lots of fascinating areas that we'll be delving with as we look at the information society. I hope the resources that you'll dig into now will really be great to take you further to understand this concept of what is the information society, or as some call it, the data society. That you can really feel comfortable, conversant to say, wow, this is expand your knowledge and vision of what that really is. Thank you.